Okay, so we're off and running on the policy meeting. Dr. Glover, will you be here for the whole meeting, or will you be headed out to the communication committee meeting, or how do you plan on split? Are you splitting your time, or just so that we can figure out how we need to address our time here?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to split for today. It sounds like there were some technical things on their side, and we figured that out.
Okay.
So at some point, Ann, when you're ready to have your technology stretched again, we found out that we can set up your school website emails, the ones that we fight forever not to use.
Mhm.
But if you log in, if we set those up, you can host your own.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily, I can set them up for you, but I can set them up in such a way that once one of you log in
Yeah.
using that email,
You're
you
the
will
host.
automatically become the host.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to move freely then.
Oh, okay. Between the two.
meetings, and the meeting will be dependent on me. So we're test drive it with communications tonight and see how it goes. And then
Oh,
we'll
that's
get
great.
everyone else on board and we'll go from there.
All right. So the only issue is I have to be able to log on to the school email. And that's been the issue with me right from the get-go. So
Yes.
it goes back to that time that I spent as the sub. I don't seem to be able to access that account. So if we can resolve that, I'm happy to do whatever it is you need. Or Jackie, tag, you're it.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I've ever used the schools, so I'd have to try it out.
so, well, that's good. So also one of the things, now that we're using board docs for the agendas for the committees, are we making multiple steps by going through Gina, or is that something that the committees should take on themselves through board docs, or is who accesses, or how does that work? Just
Sure. No, we get the agenda to Gina and she pops it right in.
okay. So
Yeah,
that's
she
not
Yep. Nope. That's not an issue. She
Okay.
literally takes what you send her and it just puts it down and lists it in. Some of the stuff that's filled in is either information you've provided or I've provided.
right.
I slide my own stuff in there because I can, but anything that you have forwarded on, she just slides in. That's not a problem.
All right. So I just didn't, sometimes when you add multiple steps, you add opportunities for things not to,
Sure.
just becomes cumbersome. So I just wanted to double check if that was working all right at your end.
Yep. So far.
All right. Very good. All right. So you did attach quite a bit of information on the Title IX
Mhm.
policy. And one of the things that I was looking at is the attorney who had gone through it had some questions about some of the coordinators that we had, the Title IX coordinator, now he identified CRCO, and that's your civil rights compliance officer, but we didn't list that as such in our organizational meeting. We have complaint officers. Is that the same role, or are they different?
It was intended to be the same role. That's there because when we ran through the policies, if you remember, the one policy says that our CRCO is the principals. And with them being the principals, hold on, my phone is ringing.
Okay.
With them being the principals by policy, so that's where the principals are under the CRCO.
Okay, so should we be calling them CRCOs, or is complaint officers sufficient? And also, one of the things is the DASHA ones, the Title IX, and the complaint officers. You're interchangeable. It's you, Julie, and Karen. So, are we meeting the intent of the policy if we have the same people? Because it said we should have different people in those positions. So should we identify a complaint officer and a deputy complaint officer, or I'm just asking because as we move forward, just to make sure that, we're looking at the right way to identify people. That's all.
Part of our challenge is there's only so many of us.
Yeah.
And the
Do we
other
go
part,
outside the administrative, mid-level administration or?
generally, no, I haven't ever run into it that way or run it that way.
Okay.
Just simply because of the nature of the complaint is administrative, so if we get someone from a teacher level or an aide level or community complaint or a student complaint, the administrator is the natural place for that to go. And the reason all of us are in there together is because we look to have both genders involved in each. To there, which in there somewhere he recommends.
Oh, sure. And I'm just wondering if we should identify one person as the coordinator and then the others as deputies so that we distinguish, because that was the question. Do we have people, oops, wait a minute. What just happened?
Nothing.
Did I lose you?
Nope. We hear and see you. At least I do.
Can you see me? I can't see it.
You're there.
Okay, phew. Lost it. The whole screen went blank, so sorry about that. And it really is only for the next organizational meeting, just to make sure that we're hitting that correctly. So did you, Dr. Glover, did you have an opportunity to look at the responses and have, do you want to go through each one or?
I had
the
a chance to
concerns?
kind of go through them quickly. To there, not enough for them just to stick in my brain.
Okay.
Into those pieces, but the one that had stuck out was about, some of the stuff that we have, like we have the appropriate people named and titled in there. I remember in there too about some differentiation between our elementary and our secondary grade levels in some of the language. I would need a little more time to look at that.
Oh, yeah. And I did want to ask that. Is secondary considered high school or is it considered college?
High school.
High school. Because there was some indication that it indicated that because we were K-12, there was some language we didn't have to have because it was identified as secondary. So I didn't know exactly what they meant by that.
Yeah, no, generally when they talk post-secondary, it's the college level. The secondary is 7 through 12.
Okay. Yeah, because for districts, notice can be provided by any individual. A K-12 institution shall be deemed to have notice. So it indicates about the secondary stuff. So I was just curious whether we should be keeping that in or,
Well, as I understand it, if we get a verbal complaint or a concern brought to our attention, that satisfies, the statute as I understand it. Right. So it doesn't, like at one point here, he talks about it needing to be in writing, and that can't be a prerequisite to take a complaint.
right.
And I kind of read this the same way under that action. Under that, it was, and I'm taking secondary not to mean the school level, but an institution that's not the school.
Yeah.
The standard appropriate order for secondary institutions, and I don't have any examples that are there, but I didn't read that as being 7 through 12.
I have to, excuse me, my nose just started running. I'm upstairs and my allergies are kicking in. So just excuse me just a second. I'm so sorry.
We're socially distanced. We're okay.
Yeah, right.
Forgive me.
I didn't grab a tissue before I started. Sorry. It's just, one of the things that it said is a live hearing, and it was indicated that it was only secondary, so there was no need to reference it. So that's what made me wonder if high school was considered secondary. Because it goes back to the training. And this is what I got all the way through it, and I thought, well, secondary was high school until I got to the live hearing. And he said, we had no reason to reference it because it was only referenced to secondary.
Yep. So that's the page 5, right?
It's like the second page from the end.
Okay.
It was under training.
Let me get to where you are.
It's,
I was
if you
looking
go
at
out,
page
it's probably
5.
easier to go to the back and scroll
Yep, that's
backwards.
what I just did.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
because it'd be nice to be able just to strike that secondary language if we didn't need it.
so it's your 18. There it is.
Under,
Yeah.
Yeah, it says for post-secondary institutions there.
okay,
Yeah, and that would be colleges.
okay, so I thought the comment said only secondary. Sorry about that.
Nope, nope, that's fine. So yeah, we can take that and strike that language up then.
But does that mean high school is not secondary?
No, the comment says secondary in it.
Oh, post-secondary,
Yeah.
okay.
So that would be
So-
the college.
That's only for
Okay, all
colleges.
right. All right, thank you. So Dr. Glover, are you willing to go through that and incorporate
Mhm.
the comments into the policy so that we can take a look at it again and see based on the comments? And the reasonable time, it did say to overestimate. So you were concerned about that when we first talked about it, the number of days, what kind of days? Do you look at it as calendar days, but just to give yourself the time that we would need to complete the steps? Is that?
Yeah, I want to say in there, he put 60 days down in one location.
Mhm.
That's generally 2 months, and that's generally fine. I want to say that language is elsewhere. It's just.
Yeah, and I think it came to some preliminary ones. It said between 20 and 30, but so it seems
Yeah,
to be
if you're looking at a month,
incremental.
it's okay. When you start talking about like 10 calendar days, it starts getting tight.
Yeah. He did say to overestimate. Come in earlier than you say you're going to, and you're better off than
Right.
if you extend past the time. So it seems pretty complex.
Mm-hmm.
Are there, and he also indicates that there's other challenges to this outside of the conversation. So is there something else driving this conversation that we should be aware of, or we're just waiting for the fallout?
We're probably waiting for the fallout. This was all really the big push through colleges.
Oh.
When some of these changes came in, with like fraternities and athletics and hazing and those pieces. So some of those activities that were more now unacceptably cultural at the post-secondary institutions. But I haven't heard anything other than in that regard for here. Those
okay.
pieces would apply to us, like our kids shouldn't be hazing on a bus for any reason. We have that in other policy, I want to say, there, but nothing else that I'm aware of.
Okay, so if you would be willing to take a look at that and to customize that based on his recommendations, and just to clarify for us as far as our organizational meeting, if there are, whether we should be taking a look at, I mean, the way it's done, it's just 3 names, so there's not a particular person and then deputies, or do we need to do that, or are we okay if we have the 3 names in those areas?
Okay.
Am I making myself,
Yeah,
as I was
because-
looking through it, I thought, based on his questions, I just wondered if we needed, because he identified coordinator, deputy, whatever. So, I mean, I didn't know if we had to have one particular person as the point person.
I'll double check.
Okay. If not, then, I mean, we have people in those positions, so.
Yeah, because the other piece that might go with that is the appeals piece.
Oh,
So they might say, a deputy first and then the actual person next before it escalates. In the event here, we've just kind of gone along the triangle. If it ended up, if for some reason I ended up with someone because they came to me for comfort level, the appeals would go to a principal. To the
I
teacher
see.
separations, not necessarily on where we are in the ladder.
Ah, okay. Should it reflect the latter or should it just be flexible like that?
I think given our size, the flexibility is the better. You know,
Okay.
the idea is that they have a different eyes and ears for an honest look at, you know, an appeal.
Okay.
There, you know, there may be questions on the ladder, you know, next, but that, you know, it's, well, is a principal going to, you know, trump what their superintendent says? I'm sure it would be a question that would be raised, but that we can look into.
All right, so you will customize the. So for our next meeting, do you think you're comfortable with that time frame?
Yeah, I think we can get there.
Jackie, did you have any other questions or concerns about the policy?
No, would we include our business manager in this at all as well?
We could.
I just know like in Granville, that's who our, like incident officer would be if it, like, let's say it's an issue with my principal, like I'm having an issue with my principal, I would go to the business manager to file like
Right.
that complaint so I just to throw another person in
Yeah.
an option, I guess, just
Yep.
because we are small.
Yeah, it's all hands at some levels.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's certainly a possibility. It also might help take care of the, you know, if you need an appeals place, it would take, you know, impart some gender pieces
Yep.
in there depending on comfort. Would take that piece away because then I could be the appeals.
Mhm.
And it would also take away the ladder issues.
Okay. All right, so a work in progress then.
Yep.
Okay. The policy for the volunteer coaches, the draft language. Yeah. One of the things that I had done is just to create some language, and one of them just said required documents, and the other was to list the actual documents. So just to see what people thought about how to move forward with that.
I like the second version of when we list like if you were to want to become a volunteer coach.
Mhm.
I like just having all those listed so it's easy for a person to just go to the policy, see what they need to do. I think it's a little bit more clear than saying, required
Mhm.
courses or certification or whatever. But
The reason I went with the first one is, because if they were to change it, then we would have to change the policy. But a lot of the policies that you're seeing come out actually have the component parts in them. So, based on what Jackie's feedback, I went to the website and there's, they have a whole complete folder on things that, requirements for coaching. So that was where I got the list. So, Dr. Glover, what are your thoughts on the process?
The only part of it is that would be the same point that you brought up. It said whenever new additions come into play would require a policy change. Is all for that inclusion.
So is that something that we should say at the minimum or should there be any qualifier there, or should at this point, if we list them, then we'll try it and see if we have to go back and make any amendments if there's any changes?
I think you could go through the one and like list them all and then have that kind of the disclaimer piece that, requirements are subject to change per state ed regulation.
Mhm.
The things that you have listed have been pretty much there since I was coaching.
I was just going to say, yeah. Mhm.
So the first aid CPR, those aren't going away. The child
No.
abuse identification isn't going away. The SAFE stuff isn't going away. The DASA stuff isn't going away. Concussion is one of those things that's new in. I would be surprised it went away.
Yeah.
Unless it became more incorporated into the first aid
The
pieces.
CPR first aid, yeah.
In that case, it might disappear. Yeah, there's something like that that is subject to change. So that way you could keep your specifics, but that way folks would also understand that there may be more
Something else might
requirements
be
or
required.
changes for requirements in the future.
Okay. And just outlining how the athletic director would be involved in the process, that seems to be a reasonable.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I will make that recommendation. I should make that change, and should we bring that to the board for at least a discussion, or should we, what would be your suggestion in how to handle that?
I would
We-
bring it up as a discussion point myself,
Okay.
just introduce the topic over. And see if there's any feedback.
So is it too late to put it on, since we're not requiring any action, to just bring it up as a discussion item at our next meeting, or is there not enough time to do that? Since
No, considering that I'm sure this won't be the only thing added to the board agenda between now and Wednesday because of the communications committee, I'm pretty sure we can slide this one in.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll insert that language that said, the recommended documentation is subject to change by the state education department, but at the minimum, they should have,
Okay.
a list.
What policy did you take this from? Are you creating a new
This is
policy?
actually attached to the school volunteer one. I just copied it, except it didn't take the number.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
I would have to go back. I'm on my laptop. I'm not on my big computer,
Okay.
so that's the one I have the whole policy on.
Okay. So you're just looking to add on, so.
It's just
add on
additional
3150.
language at the end. What I did is I just inserted it at the end of the language between the citations,
Okay,
in the policy and the citations.
got it.
So if I do that and should I forward it to you or forward it to Gina?
No, you forward to both of us. That's fine.
Okay.
Or just, I'll let you, when
And Jackie.
Gina or Ryan are both here tomorrow in our normal half hour before the day starts, if we're allowed to. I give her the heads up on here's what we did in the meetings last night, so she knows what's coming.
Okay. All right, so we'll just bring it up for discussion, and then we'll formalize any language changes, and we can bring it up for action in January?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. The interview questions and surveys. Dr. Glover, you were the one that you were in. Doctor, I have to ask. I went back to look because this is actually in a time when Peter and I were away, and Mary brought it up to the board. And you did have a series of conversations that you shared with somebody from Gervin and Filazzo, and it referenced an attachment, but in my email, I didn't see any way to access an attachment that had the survey questions. So are the survey and the exit interview questions, were they ones that you had been shared by the attorney?
The one piece, yes, there was some that, because I asked for a template from them hold on, I can't look.
And it goes back to January 2020.
I actually think I have it up. This has kind of been a long running conversation.
Yeah, it was.
Because I think Scott worked on this one too.
Right. This an Alex Dahl, Dahle.
Okay.
It was dated January 13th. And that was the policy. And then I went back to that date and I found the strand of conversations, and it referenced an attachment, but on my email, I couldn't access any attachments. So I didn't know if you had gotten it.
Yep, I have the interview template. It is actually the one that is posted.
It's posted.
Yep.
And the survey as well?
What's that?
Was the survey as well? Okay, because this is not what made it to the board. We had, Okay.
No, the survey was not. The survey was a conglomeration of things from other surveys we looked at.
right,
But I want to share it with. On that, the attorney
okay.
on that one in this email set.
Is there any way to search the school email, the Gmail,
Mm-hmm.
by date?
Yes.
Because I tried to do that and I didn't get any emails, so I figured I was doing something wrong. So it just don't. I mean, I'm used to one way of doing it. So is there? Do you have to put it up in the search?
Yeah. If you
Bar?
look up in the search area, and I tend to start with email addresses. You know, so if you're
Okay.
looking from me, you know, like if I'm looking for something from you, I'll put your email address in, and then
Okay.
underneath the search bar, you'll have some options pop up. And then you click on, it says anytime, you click on that arrow and it will it'll allow you to, like a week older, a month older, or 6 months older, you know, a year older, or a custom range, and then you can pick what you're looking for.
Okay. All right. So this actually, if these are the ones that came to us from the attorney, they do line up.
Yes.
Between the questions and the survey. So they do line up, as the other ones did not. So this is just something that I think the board just needs to be apprised of. I don't think anything needs to be adopted, do you?
I don't think so, because the template was just the template. The
Uh-huh.
survey was different though, and I remember. Jackie, do you remember an interview, a survey piece? I remember because we went through a couple.
I'm going to be honest with you. When I looked at it, it didn't look familiar to me. So I did go back into my folder of things that we had talked about, and this was not in it. The survey, the one that was indicated as the survey. But I'm going to say this was when Peter and I were away. So Mary was there, and she was acting as point person for the committee at that point. So I didn't know if this was something that happened while we were away. That's why I went back to search the emails, but I couldn't find it in the email. So that's why if this is what's been suggested by Gervin and Filasso, it does line up with the template.
Yeah, the survey was kind of a conglomeration of some other things. And because I'm looking here at the one that's actually posted, I have like in hand. But I remember another conversation I remember I was having a conversation about the racial discrimination, the sexual harassment there, and are all those things we would want to keep in the survey. And
Yeah.
the attorney had raised some concerns about, you ask the question, you get the answer, you have to act on it.
Right.
As a precautionary. But there were some other questions like, from other surveys that we brought in and talked about. But I remember putting those together.
Yeah, so that's why I was questioning it, because this does not look familiar to me based on the conversations that you're referencing. We had something entirely different, put together, but I didn't know if you had submitted it and, there was,
That other item, Ann?
pardon me?
The other one that you said you just said you had one that was completely all together? Do you have
No,
that?
it was just, when I went back through my notes, I did the same thing you did. We had taken different things from different places that we thought that would be appropriate for Salem. So I had things that, I had circled in pencil that we had put together, and I hadn't seen that. But again, this was that January, February time when I was away. So I don't want to assume that work, that was done. I don't want to preempt that. If this was something that, the board had looked at, because Mary was going to talk about it at the board meeting, so I didn't know what had been presented.
It was like after the
It would have been a February board meeting, February of 2020. But what's there, I'm trying to, I think that's what's, it didn't match what we have, the new one,
Okay. Well, let me look here.
which was what caused the questions.
Yeah.
And it's just, if it's just a matter of just making people aware of what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, and all we're doing is just trying to put together the survey that matches the template somewhat. And
So this survey was intended for somebody to do ahead of time?
Yeah, I think that's how, if I remember, that's how the policy read, was that they would have a chance to do the survey first, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think the survey part was missing from the February meeting,
Yeah.
which is why we just went with the questions.
Yeah. Well, let me find it. Read that. We can find what that. Looking over to see if
I'm pretty sure it was November.
Okay. July, June.
This is me trying to navigate a split screen.
I'm not seeing it there. Well, got stuff all over the place. Let me see here.
Meetings 2020.
What one is it in? Because it wasn't in the February.
It was not. Okay.
Not in, well, that was, I guess, the one before. Hold on. Did we have?
February. No, that's
Maybe
December.
we started the survey and never finished it.
I don't.
So maybe that's something that we need to take back on?
Yeah, because I'm looking back through my folder of where I keep all of our policy changes and any of the work that, at least the work that I've done on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm only seeing that interview template. I'm not seeing
Right.
anything about, and I see survey. Seeing a folder. It's a little.
Policy, there's nothing in policy review. So because I went back to our minutes and Mary was supposed to be talking about it at the February meeting. So if that didn't happen, then that's just something that we need to
I remember that.
come to an agreement about how we want to move forward on a survey.
If we're having this much problems trying to find it, we might as well hit the reset button on it. And,
Okay.
You know, and try to put it back together. Because by the time you want to get a little late.
You got it?
Well, actually, I just see one here that I started in.
Because I have a copy of the policy that the attorney had chimed in on.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
February.
Okay, here, hold for a second.
And according to our minutes, Mary was going to present that at the February meeting.
I think all she at the, oh no, that's, there is,
Oh, you just disappeared. Are you looking at a purple screen that says exit interview survey on it?
Yeah. So okay. Is this,
So this is something I had started putting together, and it's based off that same survey that was in the attached to the board pieces.
okay. So so we really don't have a survey that the board has
Yeah, because
seen
that
said we should try. So
no, that's just in Google format. So, and it is, and if that hasn't been shared with the board with the policy piece, then the board hasn't approved, that
Right.
survey. It has approved the interview questions.
right, that came up.
Yeah. But you're also, with this, you're also welcome to, kind of give any interviewee the questions before you interview them with them,
Okay.
Just questions, read them over, and we'll be talking about these if you want to, or.
All right. So they're in April. Come on. It won't open on me.
in May, we reviewed the question template, the interview question template.
But not the survey.
No, I don't, everything that I see, I haven't come across the survey at all.
Yeah.
And I don't actually recall it until seeing it now. I don't.
Okay. So Ann, why don't we just hit the reset button on it and start,
Okay.
and restart. We have some foundations, some things here.
Mhm.
And we can use that as a foundation and then go from there, how we want to adjust accordingly and just bring that back to the board.
Okay. I think that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So do you want to take that on, Dr. Glover, or do you want Jackie and I to look at that, or how do you want to proceed?
Let me dig up what I have
Okay.
and then get it to you.
All right.
And then we can decide where we want to go from there, because I think a lot of that will depend on what type of questions you might want to add or subtract, to whatever
Okay.
we have foundationally.
So we will, okay. And okay. All right. So that makes sense to do that over. All right. So we will, I think that was one of the things that in that COVID onset got just slid by. So-
That good.
I'm sure there's a couple of other things. Okay. Your action calendar. Now I have to admit that I think I maybe did not communicate exactly what I was looking for.
Okay.
Because your calendar is a board action. And I was thinking that if we had to have things ready for the board at a certain time frame, that we needed our own time frame for committee review. So when I saw your board calendar, I began to wonder, are we keeping our dates? Or so what I was thinking is, when does the committee have to review it to have it ready for the board? So I was thinking that there would be like 2 dates, like in July. Well, July was tough because July starts everything all over again. So that's a tough date. But like in July, are we looking at what needs to be done. So I guess I'm not really sure. So this,
So is this the one you were talking about, Ann? Should be on your screen.
right, your committee review? Yeah. You added the column for committee review.
Yep. So
And does that keep us on track to have things to the board in the proper time frame? I guess is what I'm,
Well, I think so.
okay?
Like code of conduct, for example, it starts back down here in February. Because looking at the policy itself, we have our work we do administratively. That next review comes up in May for the board review. So in the committee, it starts in February for the board, to the board for any board review, and the work that's being done would be in May. For the public hearing, it's June, and then for board approval would be July.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
So these are-
One of the, Jackie, one of the things, oh, I'm sorry. I get, oh, there you are. I see your calendar. I had to look for the small picture. What I had talked to Dr. Glover about, Jackie, when we met for the agenda is he had actually placed the code of conduct as a public hearing again.
Yep.
And I did ask that it just be a review of the language so that the board could adopt the restorative language. But I did ask for in January if we could identify a committee of students, administrators, staff, and community members or parents to actually take a comprehensive look at the code of conduct, especially in light of the fact of the conversations we're having at the equity committee. So, I'm hoping that we can adopt the language so it can move forward, but have a complete review of the code of conduct starting, if we are looking at the committees in January. Is that something that moving forward we can have in place, Dr. Glover?
Yeah, I think so. I spoke with Ms. Adams.
Okay.
On that for the presentation here for this week. And then, starting that process of really everything getting back, beginning with that, the deadline date of wanting it approved in January, and then just making sure there's enough meetings prior to then to get us to the necessarily public hearing and for the board to have an opportunity to see it before it gets to a public hearing. But I think it's not possible.
Okay. Well, it's just the constraints of meeting probably remotely in order to get that done. So the sooner we can get those things in place, I think the easier it will be for people to have the opportunity to look. So,
Yeah.
So who will be responsible for making sure that the committee review is prepared to do that? I mean, because I won't always be in this place.
Yeah. Well, with that's an assignment that I assigned to Ms. Adams.
Okay. But I mean, as far as on our board action calendar,
Yeah.
is that something that you are going to incorporate in our agenda development, or put this alongside the agenda development so that it happens, or there's some flag or something that will cause this to be prepared? Or how best to handle how that preliminary work is done before it gets to the board?
Well, I think part of that is it's making it's a mainstay here for us.
Okay.
So between Gina and me, to making sure the things hit the board when they need to hit the board.
Okay.
It's not everything on here necessarily goes to this committee first.
Correct.
Right. Or necessarily comes to this committee.
Right. So that's.
So, so that's in part there. I think the other part is when it comes to our agenda pieces, it's just making sure they're on for review. As long as we continue with the kind of the policy committee format, it's just keeping it there and making sure it hits the agenda.
Okay, so you will keep this, so you and and the secretary will keep this so that we won't need to trigger something in order for it to be ready for the board to consider? Or do you think
Oh.
it should come up for discussion first and then adoption, or a readoption, or, because some of these have to be annual readoptions?
Some of them are very few.
Mhm.
The safety plan's an annual adoption. The code of conduct's an annual adoption. Safety plan, code of
So
conduct.
some of them only need to be reviewed
Yeah, which is why
annually?
we moved them to this committee, just because it was a review piece. And then if there's any action that needs to happen from there, then it would come out of this committee.
Okay. So since we're now doing the agendas and board docs, they can be loaded into the agendas?
Yeah, we can add the links right in.
Okay. It's just that we have a calendar, we just have to have a mechanism for making it
Yep.
work.
We just have to start using it.
Yeah, so I'm just so that, we know who the responsible party is.
Yep,
So that would be
that would be Jen and me.
the superintendent's office?
Yep,
So you will initiate?
Yep.
Okay. And that way we won't miss
Gotta get
any
just gotta get it
required,
into our process is all.
okay, all right.
Which
So
actually,
that's
when
good.
we organize by board meeting. So I'll talk with Gina how that might work best in organization.
Okay,
Because whenever we have things we know are coming up, we kind of, we have a tickler file to put this in the tickler file for this meeting. So we have a mechanism that's in place. It's just getting this to be incorporated into it. So it's not it's more of an addition. It's a change.
all right, just then that will make sure that we hit those things that we're supposed to do. Okay, good. And as far as the student member, I know that we had a question. Do we need the policy in place to take it to the voters, or do we take it to the voters and create the policy?
I'm going to have to re-ask that question.
Okay.
To there. So I'll add that to my question to Scott. It fell off my table a little bit, but also Ms. Lanchan had a death in the family.
Yeah.
So I know this would be something I would ask her, so she isn't going to be available here. Recently.
I don't think it would be, I mean, the policy that what you've shared with us seems to be standard language. The stuff that was updated in 2005, that seems to be, pretty comprehensive compared to some of the ones that I've looked at from other schools. It seems to be that they use that as the template for their policy. So I don't think that's going to be an issue to put a policy together or have one for the board. It's just a matter of making sure that we have it in time to adopt it. We have the readings and adopt it so that we're prepared for the time frame for bringing it to the voters, if that's what the board chooses. So if we do that, it has to be done by April, correct?
Yeah, and we have plenty of time for that.
Okay, well, that would be, we need March, we need 3 months backwards. So we should be looking to have something for our January meeting for discussion.
First meeting
And
should be January.
all right,
Yeah, first meeting should be January. And it is pretty straightforward. And usually in our straightforward stuff, we waive and adopt on a second, unless there's something we need a third for. That's there. So yeah, I don't think we can make that happen.
Okay, just so that we meet those time frames, so that we don't miss any filing. So,
Okay.
and so you and Gina will take care of organizing that calendar, and what and how I'm giving Gina the information for the board docs agenda works for your office.
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, that covers what we had on the agenda. Was there anything else that anybody wanted to bring up for discussion?
Not
So-
today.
All right, so for the next meeting, we are still looking at the Title IX policy changes.
the survey.
We'll bring the draft language for the coaches into this meeting, coming up. And we'll look at the survey again, or do you think that just bringing that to the board, or should you come to the committee first for the exit interviews?
I would think you'd want to have a template. So just where you think you're headed first.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
we'll
the board-
keep that on our agenda for discussion, and the policy for student on the board.
Yep.
And we didn't receive a policy pulse for this month. Is that something that's typical? Do they skip December's?
I don't know. I'm making sure I didn't get one.
Okay. Jackie, did you get one? I didn't see one. No. Not that I'm looking for
Last I'm
things.
seeing is November.
Right. So maybe.
We haven't gotten it yet.
So unless they bring anything else up to us, unless there's something else that comes up, those will be. So is it too early to tell Gina for the next meeting that those are our topics and she can start the agenda at that point? Or do we wait? What's the best way to handle that?
I can zip her an email when we're done here and say this topic's for the next meeting, and she'll have them and we can get them done. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And no, I think that, because I can't think of anything else. Jackie, is there anything else that you can think of that?
I can't. Not right now, anyways.
But it's always open. We have plenty of time to add. But I didn't know when she started the agendas. And do they go live right away, or how is she handling the committees?
Well, when the committees come, we tend to get the committee information closer to the meeting date.
Okay.
That's there. So, you know, for example, we got Bob's information to this weekend or today, relatively close. So when Gina came in, she put it right on. She made it right live and active right off the bat. That's there. And that, I think that's how she's been doing it with the other ones as well. It's once we get it in, we're getting it in the set, and then just going ahead and making it active. Because it's generally within a couple days of the meeting.
And the only thing is, it's for me, the easier it for me to take care of it right as I do it. So,
Sure.
you know. So if that works for her, I'll, I don't mind if she holds it, but if I email it to her, then it's off my plate.
And we did another, yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, unless there's anything else, I think we've covered our items, but that gives you a minute to check into the communication committees, maybe.
Well, last time I checked
See
in
how
at
they're doing.
this point, they were gone when I got
Oh,
there.
were they?
So, yeah, so we'll see.
So was Bob not going to be in attendance? I saw a conversation about Dan being the host. Is that trying to start the meeting? Is that how the?
Well, it's, the challenge is I set up all the meetings, so it automatically makes me the host. So I can't run two meetings off one computer at the same time. So how do we run two meetings at the same time? And, in part let me float, but in part let, that committee run its committee while this committee's running this committee. And we can do that. There's a function in here that if you're in the domain, that you can log in, and if you're the first one in the domain, it will make you the host.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have any of those responsibilities, and you get them. Congratulations. There. But in order to do that, because remember, we use a software program from BOCES, is you have to be part of the domain, and that's where the email piece comes into play.
Oh, okay. Well,
we're just grown to another level of WebEx experience, so we're ready for the next step in.
there you go. All that technology, and it's stretching my brain, but all right. Well, thank you very much. And our next meeting is January 4th? No, 11th, January 11th.
11th. It's already up and posted. We made all these recurring now.
It's the
All
11th.
right.
Yep.
You should automatically get them and away.
All right. So next meeting, January 11th. 2021, it will be a better year. Yes.
So,
All right, so let's hope. All right, well, we will see everybody Wednesday.
good
All right,
night.
see ya.
All right.